So yeah, we're going to go start recording now. Okay, awesome. So next up is Chris Stone. He's going to talk to us about remote retrospectives. Go ahead, Chris. Take yourself off mute. Yep.
Good evening, folks. Let me just share my screen. And if I can get a thumbs up from someone once they can see what I'm sharing, that will be wonderful.
Yeah, we're seeing the multi-slide view right now.
Excellent. So we're seeing a Miro board, and this is basically a lightning talk that I delivered as part of World Retrospective Day, which was only a week ago. So my talk's all about remote retrospectives, enabling retrospectives to be run very successfully, regardless of where you all are located. And my belief is that immersion plus creativity equals engagement. That's my formula for a good retrospective. So why make creative retros? Why do it? Well, to keep things fresh. How many of you have been involved in a retro that's stale because it's the same format every time? What went well? What didn't go well? What are we going to do next time? What made us sad? What made us glad? You know, some of these formats, they can become a bit stale. They can cause people to disengage, and as a consequence, switch off a little bit and perhaps not interact as much. Another reason is to celebrate microcultures. Now, just by way of conversation between you and I, if you could post in a chat right now something that you geek out about personally, do tell me. What do you geek out about? So I'm seeing people learning, transformation and inner growth. Doesn't have to be work related. Photography, there we go. Anything else? Any TV shows? Any books? Does anyone like Star Wars? Does anyone like certain things? Does anyone? Yeah. What the reason I ask this question is because when you do so, you discover very quickly, and I'm sure everyone's aware of this, everyone's different. We all have different things, our likes and dislikes. And when you combine those to a group of people in a team, an agile team, they have their own microculture. And we should celebrate that. You know, sometimes you've got a group of people that love music, a certain style of music. Sometimes it's a group of people that love video games, and celebrate that, be part of it, allow them to be part of that and create an experience that they connect with. I mentioned before to promote engagement, you know, by doing something a little differently, a little bit of creativity helps get people thinking in a different way. And I'll give you an example. If you're in a daily stand-up and you say to a group of people, hey, what blockers do you have? A lot of the time people will just, no blockers today. But if you said to them, well, what support do you need? That might be a very different question. That they might say, actually, no, I could do a bit of help on this. And just a slight rephrasing of that question can result in more engagement. To promote different thinking. So again, asking the question in a slightly different way can get people thinking differently. I often use themes, video games, movies, music, all sorts of metaphorical terms to get people thinking differently. And lastly, because I'm a firm believer that work can be fun. And you can see here, I'm wearing bunny ears because it's almost Easter. I did release an Easter-themed retrospective today. And I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of the retros that I've created. So there's the Queen rock band. One of my favorite stories about the Queen retrospective was that someone came to me one day and they said, hey, there was this hard-nosed transformation program manager who never cracked a smile and was always business. And we did the Queen retrospective, and he opened up that he loved the rock band, and he engaged and he smiled, and it was unheard of for this team. So just by doing something a little bit differently, got a great result. So there's a few examples you can see. There's Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, Guns N' Roses. There's a Diwali theme retrospective. A lot of retrospectives out there are very Western focused. So doing a Diwali one was more inclusive of some of our colleagues from around the world. Now, again, another question for you guys in the chat. Should work be fun? What are your thoughts? I'm seeing nodding. I'm seeing definitely, yeah. So I'm a complete believer in this. Work should be fun.
This is Sandeep. If I can pause you for a minute.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for that Diwali retro. I used a part of it and changed a little bit in my company a few months ago around Diwali, and it was well received. So thank you for posting that on LinkedIn.
I love hearing that, and thank you for sharing. What you've just shared there, Sandeep, just echoes the majority of all of the feedback I've pretty much ever had around these creative retros. People love them. Here are some examples just on the screen here of people saying how great they were, how people loved using the templates, how it resulted in great results. What I am highlighting here is there's a big red box around one of them, and it's that someone didn't like it, and that's okay. Not everyone will resonate with it, and we shouldn't force fun. It's not about that. But by approaching that person empathetically, perhaps discussing with them, we might understand why they weren't interested. And maybe it's just they didn't resonate with the theme, who knows? But in my experience, these are very widely enjoyed. I'm just going to show you now an example of one of the templates, the many templates that I create for immersive retro themes. This is the Pirates of the Caribbean retrospective. And yes, when I've done this retrospective, I was dressed like a pirate. You can see here, there are questions. There are a series of questions. I always begin every retrospective with the Retro Prime Directive. It's a thing that's created by Norm Keith. And for me, it sets the expectations for the retrospective and the purpose in a very, very great way. It gets people thinking of unconditional positive regard. So we're there to learn, not to blame. I always include an icebreaker. We're not getting those water cooler chats face to face anymore. So having an icebreaker, something a bit fun to ease people into it. What's your favorite pirate joke? People can share that. And then you can see here, there are some examples of prompts, questions you may ask to get people thinking differently. Here's a Captain Barbossa one from the film Pirates of the Caribbean. If you've seen it, he famously says, the code is more what you call guidelines than actual rules. So with that question, where did we as a team bend our rules or principles, or where did sticking to the rules actually hold us back? I actually think that quote could be more widely applied across Agile in general. Some people think of certain frameworks as being these dogmatic things that have to be done to the letter, when actually they're probably more guidelines to be followed for people to learn from and adjust and use accordingly. I've also recently introduced a rate your retro concept where people do a 5-star, a fist of 5 rating of how that retro was for the team. And why I created this was to guide people towards good retrospective behavior. So getting the whole team contributing, identifying actions that have owners that teams take forward, because it's all good talking about things, but if you're not getting actions from them improving, odds are you're going to be talking about them in a few weeks' time anyway. So there's another little bit there. And we're going to come to some resources that I'm going to leave you guys with in the actionable takeaways section, because I am conscious of time. I do want to make sure this lightning talk does finish within 10 minutes. So I'm a big believer in leaving people with materials, actionable things they can do differently with their working lives afterwards. So a few messages for you. A little less conversation, a lot more action. To quote infamously from Elvis and the Elvis retrospective, try shortening a retro. The reason I do this is it gets people focused, short and sharp, on a little less conversation, a little more action. And the way I do this in retrospectives is take one theme at a time, get people to dot votes and prioritize accordingly, the topic most important to them, and then pull 1 to 2 actions out from that. And then those actions should be added to the sprint backlog to be prioritized alongside the other potential workload, because otherwise, if it's not there and exposed and transparent and visible, people will probably forget about it. Empower the team to select a format that works for them, or create a retrospective theme with your team. Again, by doing so, they feel like they have a voice, they're part of it, and again, they're more likely to engage as a consequence. Again, prioritize the improvements together. So there's lots of potential things that can come out of retrospectives, but get the team to choose the ones most important to them, the ones that to them will deliver the most value, and use dot voting or other techniques accordingly to get them there. And what I like doing here is with the theme. So if we've got a Pirates of the Caribbean theme, you can see I got people dot voting using tiny little Captain Barbossa heads rather than just a dot. Again, it's just a little part of creating the immersive experience. Final few things then, you can extend the engagement beyond retrospectives. So you can create a team language. So if a team loves Marvel, for example, when it comes to estimating, they could say, well, it's not a 1 or a 1, 3, 5, 8, 13 in the Fibonacci sequence. It's an Ant-Man or a Hulk, or it's a Tyrion versus a mountain from Game of Thrones. So there's all sorts you can do with it. And yeah, help them create their own team language and make it immersive. And lastly, a little bit of creativity goes a long way. You've seen from some of the feedback that I shared, you'll see from some of the responses that I get from people when I share these templates for free, it goes a long way. So I invite you to give it a go, try create your own retrospectives, share with the community, because you don't really have much to lose. Other than that, so I'm just going to let you know that there are plenty of more resources available to learn more about retrospectives. This is a condensed version of a longer workshop that I've delivered. The full workshop is available on LinkedIn. I often do these workshops for free, so look out for more of those. If you want to get access to some of these templates I create, I will share the links with you in the chat. They will be available for you. There is, by click of a button, access to 32 retro templates that you can just plug and play into your own Miro, mural, or otherwise instances and use accordingly. So you don't even have to create ones yourselves because they're all available for free. And lastly, I do have a YouTube channel, as I mentioned, where I do share a lot of video themed content around agility, agile games as learning techniques. I've actually just released an interview with Lisa Adkins that went live a couple of days ago. So do look out for that. That's me done, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Hey, Chris, do you mind if we, once you get that link together, if you could email me or contact me, what I'll do is I'll put it in our Slack channel as well. That'd be really helpful.
I will do.
Awesome. Okay, great. So one of the pieces of feedback we got, and what I'm going to do next after the next lightning talk is basically going to be on the survey that we had done back in December, just to kind of give you an idea of what happened there. One of the pieces of feedback that we got during that survey, however, was that people wanted a break in the middle. Trying to go on for like an hour and a half or whatever seemed to be a little bit too long for them. So I think what we'll do right now is actually we'll take a bit of a break. So what I'm going to do is I'll set a timer for, what I want to say, 5 minutes or so, just enough for that biological break if you need it or whatever. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share a screen so we can see how much time we got left. And then when you folks come back, what I'll do is go ahead and talk to you folks about the survey results. So let me go ahead and start the timer again.
What I will do as well is I'm conscious it's 12:30, it's half midnight for me, so I'm going to go to sleep in a moment. But if anyone would like to stay and chat over the break, do ask me some questions in that time frame if you'd like to do so. And then I'm going to head off and get some sleep.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Chris.
Any questions from anyone? Anyone want to talk about retros?
How about an EPL themed retro? Do you have any of those?
What was that? What was the EPL?
Do you have an English Premier League retro anywhere?
I have. It's on the backlog. It's on the backlog. I've been thinking about creating that and how I would do it without insulting lots of my friends. I'm an Arsenal fan, right? And I've got Spurs fans and things like that. And I could very easily make jokes about the Spurs fans by saying, "Hey, where do we never win?" And where do we never win trophies? And that could be the Spurs team one. But I need to think about that a bit more.
I think that might be pretty widely adopted.
Yeah, could be. I've got I always take requests. So if you have any retro themes you'd like me to create, I add them to the backlog. I'm actually releasing 52 new retro themes this year. I'm on number 13 as of today. One for each week of the year.
Terrific.
So I have a question. How long do your retros usually take?
I challenge my teams to finish within an hour. And again, it's in the interest of that shorter, sharper, focused conversation. In my experience, that works quite well. And I'm an avid champion of shortening meetings, not lengthening them. So I say anything over 45 minutes is a workshop. I don't schedule half-hour meetings. I schedule 20-minute meetings and 50-minute meetings rather than an hour meeting. So I always challenge teams to finish in a shorter time frame and just do focused conversation at that time, and they can always pick up next time round. Obviously, contextually, if you've got a newer team that might be opening up for the first time and they're engaging in some good conversation discussion, I wouldn't want to hinder that. But perhaps on a more mature team, I do challenge them to try and finish within an hour.
Interesting.
Any other burning questions?
No, but I would just want to let you know, I just saw that you are actually connected to my baby brother, and you will be the topic of our conversation next time I talk to him. So your ears are burning. He's
Okay, nice.
he's he's in Bulgaria, so
Ah,
he's an agile coach there.
are you, well, actually, you're Bulgarian as well. Zdrasty, как си?
Добре съм, благодаря. Беше много приятно.
My Bulgarian isn't that great, I'm afraid. I know some very basics like Dobre utro, Dobar den, Dovizhne, things like that, but nothing to the extent I could have a proper conversation. I just thought I'd say hello.
Hey, you just showed that you know more than 99.9% of the world population, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not bad, eh? Not bad for a 1 week visit when I went skiing. I did learn Azam Shtashliva Panda.
Yes, great. Well, we can meet skiing there sometimes in Talk Agile.
Sounds good.
What do you think? And that was a great example. I think, what do you think a good retro that kind of transcends culture, right? Because as you mentioned, some of these are very Western concepts and Western things, and we want to be culturally inclusive, right? So every culture presents its own challenges. I mean, maybe you could give an example of a retro where, you know, a good retro that you've used that kind of is culturally neutral, let's say, or is it that you want to embrace certain cultures at some point from a learning perspective, right?
I would say, yeah, I would say a bit of both, right? So I like to use some formats that are very inclusive, that do celebrate a set. So I tend to create ones around topical areas. So I'll be releasing an Eid one for the Muslim culture. I've released obviously a Diwali one that time of year. There's lots of festivals around that time of year for people in that part of the world. And actually, it's an opportunity. If you do a focused retro on that culture, it's an opportunity for people that don't know about that culture to learn about it. So for example, the Easter one today, the icebreaker for that is, what's your favorite tradition at this time of the year, which is actually inclusive because it doesn't suggest that everyone celebrates Easter, but this time of the year has traditions that come with it for different people in parts of the world, and you get the opportunity to learn that about people. With regards to a format that I think transcends culture, I think Hero's Journey is a great one because it's just a story arc, and it doesn't matter which culture you're from. A story arc is basically baked into people's history, and it comes from religion and things like that. So the story of success, a hero, whether that's a Western hero or another part of the world, it exists. There's often a mentor role. There's often a risk or a treasure or an evil villain someone's going to face. So that one I find does tend to translate quite well. And then obviously the other ones like 4Ls, what have we learned, lapped, etc. There's plenty out there.
Thank you. Excellent.
Right, I'm conscious of time. I don't want to hold anyone any longer. It's been a pleasure, guys. I'm going to go get some sleep.
All right. Sleep
All the
well,
best.
Chris. Thank you. And thanks to Fee, by the way. He may have left already, but thank you to Fee for his presentation as well. Some awesome stuff we've got going here. So I'm going to go ahead and just take you folks through the December 2020 member survey. Just hopefully it'll be less than 10 minutes. We'll see how long it goes, though. Right. So as an organizing committee, we wanted to get to know our members better, right? So we want to start incorporating more member engagement in what we do. So what we did is we developed a survey and we sent it out in December. And there were 2 survey versions that we had sent out with some shared questions between the 2 others were unique. So what we did is we sent it out based upon whatever Meetup determined as being active. But members who are active up to 6 months prior, and then inactive members, which would be anybody else in our activity universe. I think it was about 700 people total that were there. And I'm not sure what this cutoff was in terms of number of people that received the survey or not. Meetup didn't tell me that, but I know the survey went out to about 700 people. So the organizers that were involved with this, we had Andrea, she's actually doing a presentation a little bit later tonight. We got Chris Schmidt, who's doing it. I was involved as well. We had Natalie and Tom Hendrickson as well. Just wanted to give a shout out to Natalie. She's not here tonight, but She's been involved as an organizer since we started or the organizers back in September, October of last year. And she is stepping down because she has other responsibilities at work. We just want to thank her for all the work that she's done and the help and everything that she's provided. It's been awesome. And I honor her for that service. Thank you very much. So we had active members that we did. Again, we had 36 folks that responded to that, right? So one of the questions is, what circumstances led you to wanting to attend? And you people were able to multi-select on this. I want to learn more. And I want to learn more about Agile and deepen my skills and knowledge. I want to connect with others who are interested in Agile were the two top ones. There are other people as well that had them. 33% said I'm looking for a job and want to network. We had just one that was looking to fill jobs or contracts. But for the most part, it's all about the connection with others and learning about Agile and deepening skills. So, useful information to have. Then we asked about what your experience is with agility, because that'll help us maybe potentially target things to folks based upon where they are. We had the vast majority, almost half, 47% were professional folks. They had some certifications and some experience. And then we had experts who were at 16% that were certified and saw it all. 13% who practiced and had no certifications, almost actually about 14%. We had 14% that were newly certified, and then we had 8% that were total newbies. So we asked the question also, what would make attending more compelling? These aren't all of the answers because we had a lot of people respond. So I just kind of took a representative subset. They want to know things like what is trending in Agile practices. They did like the Lean Coffee breakout sessions. I think continuing those would be great. Perhaps there are additional ways we can use smaller breakout rooms, some more connections there. Some folks enjoy the lightning talks much better. Catering needs of various groups of people. That was a theme. Learning about change in the Agile community, again, was a theme. Networking and deeper knowledge provides input for others on new learning. So it was a lot about the network. There was some sessions and conversations about doing things for real life issues, and perhaps even having large group discussions around how to solve specific problems. So you're saying that a large group allows for different perspectives and everything like that. Some folks wanted well-known speakers. And overall, we just got a lot of positive feedback on how things were going so far. I love your events. They're fun, entertaining, easy to relax and learn, great environment. And some folks just didn't want to change anything, so that tells us that we're hitting some notes really well. When you have a question about Agile Lean, where do you look for advice? We got a lot of conversations about the internet or, collaborating with networks, colleagues, in some cases, reaching out to Agile coaches and experts, forums and peers and mentors. And what value do you get from coming to the sessions? Because we wanted to be able to turn up the positive, right? So meeting new people, validating that I'm not too far off, learning new things, collecting with like-minded people was a big one. Assessing the state of union of Agile in New Jersey, know the trends and hot topics. And we're looking for candid input from people with hands-on experience and different views. Kind of keeps your interest. Some diversity of opinions. Wanting to know more similar challenges from people, what works from them. Again, back to that real experience. A lot of, again, positive feedback on lightning talk sessions. And a lot of comments about, again, positive value. So what annoys you about the meetup and what would need to happen to change that? And I got a lot of nothings, which was awesome. And another big one was that they're online. I'd like to go back to in-person when COVID subsides. I guess people are kind of sick of COVID and meeting online. Can't say that I blame them there. There have been lightning talks where it might have been good to have a halftime break. So we implemented that tonight. That was the 5-minute break we had. Lean Coffee format, they found some challenges there where their topics may not have been addressed. Not knowing who other people are. So that, again, we addressed that by doing breakout rooms tonight. One person's complained about too many unsolicited email messages. We try to keep those relatively small. Lengthy speeches. Okay, we get it. One person mentioned they have a hearing disability. So sometimes the speakers will be too soft-spoken. So it might be feedback for things like our folks that are doing presentations. Try to use some visual aids where you can to help those who are hard of hearing. There was an ask about submitting Agile questions in advance to everybody for the lean coffees. There's a balance in the trade-off in that. We try to lean towards just-in-time decision-making on that because then we know like who's attending. Like we wouldn't want to have to address issues and then people wouldn't show up if they actually put their issues in. But anyway, a lot of comments about it. They like it being informal, not putting a lot of rules around it. And a couple of concerns regarding Wednesday night, too many scheduling overlaps. So we'll talk about that as an organizers group, but we may put a survey out to try to see, what time works best for most folks. And then opinions without experience and learnings to support it. So it's good to know. So what about inactive members? We didn't get a lot of responses there, 11 people. Very similar in terms of what circumstances led them to originally signing up and wanting to attend, learning and deepening their knowledge and connecting with others. Interestingly enough, learning and connecting here actually was larger for folks that aren't attending than the connection. The experience layout was a little bit different. These are folks that don't attend on a regular basis, practice, have experience, but no certifications, interestingly enough. But again, 11 people isn't really a good representative number. So, take this all with a grain of salt. What would make attending even more compelling? Sharing the agendas more. And a lot of the thing has been about scheduling. Like, would love to have more than 24 hours in a day. Availability. One person saying me not procrastinating on signing up. It's really on my side to make the time and commitment. So, and then what are some reasons you haven't attended one of our sessions recently? And a lot of them just boiled down to available time. I'd say the vast majority had to do with that. And then again, one respondent was concerned about not much details about the session. So, yeah, so what do they do instead of attending our sessions? They say a lot of them, a majority of them were focused on work or something similar. It had a lot to do with being tied up at work and that taking a lot of their time. We did have some one-off responses that said sleep, makes sense. Having time with family, awesome. And reaching out to forums and online communities, that's what they do instead, and Googling things. So what are our next steps? We're going to talk with the organizers groups about potentially doing some empathy interviews coming up. And what we'll do with that is there are a subset of folks during the survey who volunteered for us to do deeper interviews with them to better understand, what their perspectives and ideas are regarding the organization. So we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive with those folks. So thank you. That was the presentation on the survey. Who has any questions?
Ken, I actually have a suggestion. I've
Sure.
been on calls where when we get on the call, we change our name to add the state that we're in, because there's people from all over the country in the call or all over the state. So that way, at a quick glance, everybody knows where everybody's from. And
Sure.
if that's one of the big things, that might be an easy way to kind of jumpstart that.
Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, feel free if anybody wants to change the name right now to include their location. That'd be awesome. I've also seen people actually use their pronouns there as
Yes,
well. They
I've done the
specify
same,
their
yeah.
pronouns. And feel free to do that. Who else has questions? Thoughts? Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things go when COVID is over, whether we meet in person or whether we continue to meet online or maybe mix it up. Again, something else we're going to have to talk about in the organizers group. So we'll see what happens. Awesome. So that was the member survey result. Next up, we have Andrea, who's going to be talking to us about scaling methodologies. Are you good, Andrea? Ready to start soon?
If I manage to unmute, so I'm good. Can you see my screen?
I can see your
Yes.
screen. It looks good.
Okay. So hi everyone. The topic of my talk tonight is Scaling Agile. It's an overview of leading frameworks as of March 2021. So I selected this topic because most of my experience so far has been with smaller standalone products. Last year also, I moved to another project. I am now the product owner of 2 products that are part of a larger product line. I see a lot of pain points from synchronizing the roadmap to ensuring that common features are really common across products. it's really time for me to think about suggestion about scaling. In this presentation, I am going to present Nexus, less, safe, and disciplined agile. Before jumping into describing each framework, I would like to launch a quick survey to see what we have as an experience about scaling agile within our group. So you may see it on the chat. If you can take a minute to click on the link and answer the question. I'm just curious to see if you have never used Scale Agile, if you use any methodology, one of these that is mentioned above, or something else that I have not mentioned yet. So let me refresh the result page. Okay, so far there are 10 answers, 5 have never scaled, and 3 are using SAFe. 1 is using a combination, and the last person has another methodology. So let's give it a little more time. Yes, the leading is, so not having ever scaled or SAFe is the big winner. If you're familiar with stateofagile.com, every year they publish a State of Agile report. The last report is from 2020. SAFe is the most popular methodology with 35%. The next methodology is Scrum of Scrum, and this surprised me a little bit because when I did the research for this talk, I did not read many articles about Scrum of Scrum, but there it is. So I did a little bit of searching to see where it is defined. So according to Agile Alliance, Scrum of Scrum was first mentioned in a 2001 article by Jeff Sutherland. Its name says what it is about. Each day, ambassadors from each team report completion, next step, and impediment on behalf of the team they represent. So let's dive into Nexus. Interestingly, Ken Schwaber, the other co-developer of Scrum, is involved with Nexus. There is a Nexus guide available on scrum.org, and there is a scaled professional Scrum certification. The goal of Nexus is to scale up to 9 Scrum teams that work on a single product. The roles are similar to the role of a Scrum. There is just one new Nexus role called the Nexus Integration Team. This is not a test team, rather a team dedicated to identify dependencies and solve cross-team issues. So it is typically composed of a product owner, the Scrum Master, and representative of the Scrum teams. The Nexus framework is pretty much like a regular Scrum. One product owner manages the backlog for all the teams. There is a cross-team refinement event, a Nexus sprint planning. Then all the team work on the same sprint, and at the end of the sprint, there is an integrated increment. The second framework is called LESS. LESS is also a way to scale teams working on the same product. And there are actually 2 frameworks, smaller less, between 2 and 8 teams, and less huge for 8+ teams. So LESS also has a single backlog and a single product owner. The sprint planning has 2 phases. Sprint planning 1 includes all the teams, and sprint planning 2 is team by team. During Scrum, each team works on its own. These are cross-functional teams. The framework does not encourage specialist teams. At the end of the sprint, there is one common shippable product. When more than 8 teams need to work on a product, it means that the product backlog is very large. It can be divided in requirement areas. So that's how Let's Huge work. It's very lightweight overall. The next framework allows to scale more than one single product. Actually, it can apply to the whole company. SAFE was created in 2011. The current version is 5.1. It was published in February 2021, so just last month. There are 4 possible configurations of SAFE. The first is Essential SAFE. It scales up to 9 teams in an Agile Release Train, ART. It's a name you may have heard when you presented, make introduction to each other. And the Agile Release Train together makes a program implement, also known as PI. At the next level, there is Large Solution SAFE that coordinates multiple release Agile train into a solution train. So it's up there. Portfolio SAFE defines value streams. I understand this as a lean way to do product management. That's portfolio. And at the top level, full SAFE handles multiple portfolios. The last framework I will mention today is Discipline Agile. It now belongs to PMI. It is based on the book Finding Your Wall or Finding Your Way of Working. The last update was in 2020. Discipline Agile is explained as a toolkit and not a methodology. It has also several layers. The bottom layer is the foundation. It's very agile oriented, and one of the key concepts is that the way of working depends on the context. So it's the team based on their constraints that will choose to do Scrum, Kanban, or something else. Discipline DevOps is really where the scaling happens, and this scaling is called Discipline Agile Delivery, or DAD. And as you can see in the graph for Discipline DevOps, there is much more than DAD in Discipline DevOps. So the framework is pretty comprehensive. At the last level, actually that's not yet the last. On the layer above, there are value streams, which involve product management and portfolio management. And at the top level, even legal and finances are lean and agile. So this DA methodology really goes up to the whole enterprise. So this was a very quick overview of a different trending methodology. Obviously, each framework requires much more time to learn, but I hope you got something out of this presentation. If you have any experience with scaling Agile, I look forward to hearing real scaling stories in upcoming Princeton Agility meetings. Do you have any questions so far? We have a little time before the 10 minutes mark. And I see a message.
Yeah, can we have because it was so fast, we could not grasp everything very quickly because of shortage of time. Can we have, the slides or the PowerPoint for reference?
Absolutely, especially that I put links to resources and different references I use for this presentation.
Thank you, Andrea. I mean, that will be really useful because I'm pretty new to these frameworks, and the way you presented the different frameworks was really helpful to kind of see the difference between them. So.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So got one more presentation, at least one more official presentation tonight. And what I may end up doing is opening up to everybody to see if they have any desire to do a lightning talk on the fly, because that's always an option. But before we do that, we have Steve who's going to be talking about creating a culture of learning and improvement. Thank you very much, for Andrea, for your presentation. Awesome. And Steve, are you ready to go?
I am ready.
Awesome, sir. Anytime you're ready, go ahead and start.
Okay, so creating a culture of learning and improvement. Okay, so actually I forget. Okay, there. So here's a question. Whose side would you want to be on in this battle? The side with 168 soldiers or the side with 80,000 soldiers? I don't know about you, but I believe in safety in numbers, and 80,000 seems way better than 168. Okay, but in Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond talked about how the Eurasians actually won with 168 soldiers, you know, and they won because they had guns, they had germs and immunity to certain germs, which the Incans didn't, and they had steel, and you know, they had firearms, tools, weapons, and possibly horses. You know, but what led to those advantages? You know, really begs that question. Were the Eurasians inherently smarter than those people in South America? No. You know, it was because of centuries of shared learning where the Europeans were able to learn faster, not because they were smarter, but because their environment facilitated shared learning. The geography and waterways allowed for crossing and intermingling of cultures and sharing of ideas, which is actually what did it. And they learned faster, if you can call centuries faster. Okay, another pop quiz. Who wins in the car market? Company A has one model in the market. Company B has sold 1 billion cars and has over 30 models. Who do you think is going to win? Obviously, you know this is a trick question. Okay, the one company that has one car is Toyota. And this one car, the Toyopet, back in 1957, could only make it uphill in California by going in reverse. It was a horrible car. It fell apart. The reliability was horrible. They only had one model, but they improved. You know, in 1957, 58, they had 1/8 the world standard on productivity. It took them 8 times longer and more costly to build a car than GM. By 1962, they were equal to the world standard. By the late 1960s, they were double the world standard. You know, so how? They learned and improved faster. And they did it in a disciplined way and by creating an environment that fostered learning. And unlike the Europeans, it took them only like a few years to do this. So they are really, truly learning faster. So it is not fail fast. I do not want my surgeon or massage therapist to move fast and break things. It's just not a good idea. It is not fail fast. It is learn faster. So anytime you hear somebody say fail fast, go, no, I want to learn faster. How? How? All right, that's what we're here to talk about. So first, I'm here to recruit you to support the Learning Alliance. Never stop learning. No reference to the Rebel Alliance, Disney, don't sue me. Okay, so I'm gonna teach you talk about an ideal learning community. And this is an ideal, right? So Samba schools. So Samba schools, you know, in Brazil, they have the big Carnival and festival. And people work together all year. And these are volunteer communities of people that want to join. They want to do it. It's dancers, musicians, artists, costume designers, choreographers, this great multidisciplinary group that brings in different talents and different viewpoints to come together and work together. It's young people and old people in the community. It's novices and experts together. What a concept. And they all share their learnings with each other and they learn together. And they learn by doing, not by reading a book or studying. They learn by doing. Okay, so building a community of learning. All right, so let's sort of go into some like specifics of how you do that. And we'll talk about it more in the breakout if you'd like. So you want to start small. You want to start by building 2 to 3 communities of learning. You don't want to start with one because then if it fails, you've got like no success story to talk about. One may fail. You want to invite participation. You don't want people to be voluntold to join a community of learning or a community of practice. You want to invite, not inflict. You can expect high interest when things start out. It will then tail off. And then, you know, you get steady growth, you know, and it comes, you got to be patient, persistent, and if you're inclined to do so, pray. It's essential to keep the heartbeat going, right? The heartbeat basically boils down to Meet at least every 2 weeks, and try for weekly if you can. You need learners, blah, 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 blah. You need to learn how to talk. You need leader support. You want having leader support and getting leader support. You have to understand what the leader's desired outcomes are, and try and align your outcomes and your learning community with the outcomes they want, and maybe 1 or 2 OKRs if they have them. Because the leader's recognition and support of this, if it aligns with their goals, during the all hands, if the leader can call these things out, you'll get more people involved. You want to have 2 co-chairs. You want to have a facilitator and a content manager. The facilitator is there to schedule a meeting, invites people, does the housekeeping. And you want a content magnet. Someone people look up to and listen to that can sort of, be an attraction, like a honeypot. You also want to have a small group of core contributors, people who can give presentations, facilitate conversations. They ask good questions and they help answer questions. This is ideal. Whoops, I went too far. Let me go back. Where did I miss? You want to provide infrastructure support, whether it's Slack messages. Ideally, when we get back to the real world, pizza and coffee, and donuts. Food is always a good thing for a community. And it's energy in, energy out. As soon as you stop supporting it, it's like a spinning top. You have to keep it going. Now, okay. So there are different types of learning communities. There's lean coffees. I mean, this group. I love the lightning talks with lean coffees afterwards, or small discussions groups. I think that's a really clever idea. Lean pizzas. I used to run at my last company where I just had pizza every Wednesday, and people really just love pizza. And free lunch. Communities of practice, which are all volunteer, is an option. Guilds, which is more a group of experts that come together for learning that can get spread out. Reading groups, pick a good book you want to read. Have brown bag lunches, and talks, internal meetups, hackathon, tech days. At Verizon, we have a tech day, which we ran. We had one on failure, which was actually awesome, learning from failure. So it's a good way to find and recruit people and bring people together. There's a really good book. I worked in dojos. Creating Your Own Dojo, which has a lot of talk about how to facilitate and help people come together. So you need to find and recruit learners. How do you get people to join these? Look at Slack. Who are the people on Slack that speak up, ask good questions, answer questions, and have good ideas, right? Who do others seem to look for guidance? Attend presentations, attend meetups like this to see who you might invite, outside speakers, right? And when you get people to come, in order to build it, you can ask each one to invite one. Invite a friend to the next meeting. Prefer learning by doing over individual certifications, and prefer group learning over individual learning. A lot of people learn better as a team, and it also facilitates that shared learning and sharing of ideas. Dojos are a great way to do that. Hackathons or datathons are other great ways to sort of learn by doing. Here is a long reading list, of which I've read just about everyone except Toyota's Way, which I'm going to kick myself. I got to read Taiichi Ohno. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The end.
Hey, Mr.
Awesome.
Steve, next time, could you have a little bit of energy? This was kind of boring.
Yeah, and I need to talk up so, people can hear me too. I'll try.
That was great. Thanks.
Thank you. And now I have to figure out how to stop sharing.
Awesome.
I don't know if I can take any more energy.
Thank you.
Here we go. I'll take care of the stop sharing thing. There you go.
There it is. I got it. Thank you, Ken.
No worries. I'm having some Zoom issues right now, so just an FYI. It's one of the reasons I couldn't change my background for you, Steve. Zoom quit unexpectedly. Awesome. Anyway, redundancy is a good thing, I've heard. Anyway, so yeah, I'm kind of curious. Is there anybody who's interested in giving something impromptu? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So is there anybody that has any questions for any of our remaining presenters tonight? Andrea's here and Steve is still here. I think the rest of the folks have disconnected. So
I was just curious about what datatons are. That's the first time I've actually heard the word. So
It's a hackathon focused on improving and characterizing your data. So, you know, we have 200 petabytes of data or so, or we have a lot of data at Verizon and Yahoo. So, you know, having good data, having it well curated, cleaned, having good metadata around it is important, and being able to do interesting things with that. So it's a, think of it as a specialized version of a hackathon.
So you've got people looking at data, looking at different scrubbing options, coming up with ideas of, hey, how I can leverage the data into an application. It's just kind of that kind of session.
Yeah, that is one possibility. That is one way to run a datathon. And yeah, we're always looking for ways, you know, how can we protect, because privacy and security is extremely important to us for both federal regulation, FCC regulation, and obviously reputational reasons.
Right.
But still, we want to find ways to safely leverage that data to better service our customers and, you know, improve our products.
Thank you. I'm going to try this out in my smaller organization. Yeah.
Cool. We should connect. I'd love to talk to you about it more.
Perfect. I'll reach out.
Excellent. And, you know, if anybody else has any other ideas on like building community successes, you know, even learning from failure, one of my favorite things, probably the only way I really learn, you know, I'd love to hear, you know, here or on Slack.
And I can share my personal experience with book reading clubs. I work in a smaller organization and we've got about 100 people, wide variety. The tech is only about 10 people. But a lot of clinicians, and we're in the medical space. So our organization was really focused on, we're very focused on our culture. And one of the things that came up in our yearly reviews as we talked to employees was the ability to have difficult conversations, because everybody wants to be nice. We love nice, right? So there is a book called Thanks for Feedback. What we did was had the entire company kind of just groups of 6 people, just followed the Scrum Agile model, not more than 6, assigned everybody, you know, hey, Monday afternoon, you're going to read the book with the chapter and you're going to come and discuss it. So just want to say that was very successful. So Steve, you were talking about developing a culture of learning. I've seen it in practice with a wide group.
Mm-hmm.
Books work. I don't like reading books personally, but I had to read it because of peer pressure, because you have to go and discuss it, right? So that's there. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. And I like the topic you picked. One of my favorite quotes is by Marvin Minsky. He says, smart people want to be corrected. They don't want to be admired. But to make that happen and to allow that happen, you really need a safe culture, you know, and build that safe culture so people can feel it's okay, you know, nobody's going to yell at me for admitting that, you know, and welcoming corrections, you know, and I think part of that is modeling it, you know, and, you know, I go out, like every new boss I meet or every new person I meet, I tell them, you know, please correct me. I look forward to it. I like to find out where I'm wrong because I know it's a lot of places, but it's tough. The other thing I like about book clubs, especially the kind that you brought up, is it can span silos, right? You know, both organizational silos and disciplinary silos, right? And a book like that is a great type of book that can do both those spannings. That was a very good idea.
Hey, Steve, since you asked, I'll throw another idea your way. Blameless postmortems is something that we've gotten a lot of success in my organization as a learning mechanism. I was at Etsy and I can't remember the name of the gentleman.
Did you work with John Allspaw?
No, I didn't work with him,
Oh,
But
okay.
I've read a lot of his stuff, and then we based a lot of our practices off of his books. Not his books, but his manuals and so on.
Yep.
Great practice. We learn a ton every time we have an incident. We like to say the only bad thing about an incident is if you don't learn something from it.
Yes. And so Etsy had a great culture around postmortems. And not just the blameless part, it was not, and if you talk to John, it's not about root cause. He hated root cause in these
Yeah.
postmortems, right? It's about the learning. I was talking to him once and he goes, how does he measure a successful postmortem? It's a number of people go, oh, aha, really? It's the number of those new insights that actually get created, because it's sort of like doing a postmortem is have the blind man and the elephant. You have a bunch of people who know like one piece of the elephant, but nobody knows the whole thing. And the real moral of the story is getting all those people together to talk about their piece of the elephant, so they all get to understand how it all connects in the big picture. Yeah, John is awesome. And he recommends way too many books that are too dense.
Oh, yeah.
All right, who else
Agreed.
has questions tonight? Feedback.
I just have a question in general for the group, and this is more predicated on the fact that Agile is kind of has its roots in lean manufacturing, right? And one of the key concepts, obviously, of lean is eliminating waste and continuous improvement to that fact, right? So I'd be curious to know, and I know we talked about SAFe and some other frameworks, is that what has everybody's experience been with lean? I feel like so often we get into agility and we get into agile principles and we get into talking about Scrum frameworks, but nobody seems to really have that grounding in lean to really understand where those concepts and things came from. So I guess this is more of a question to the group, and perhaps this is an opportunity to have this as a topic in maybe a future lightning talk or whatever, but how well are folks grounded in lean, and how well do you feel that you understand how lean relates to agility, agile principles, and agile frameworks like Scrum, Kanban, XP, what have you?
So I'll let somebody else go first.
I guess I'll throw into this one. I mean, it depends upon the people in the organization, right? I mean, we talk a lot about building quality in. We talk about eliminating waste, right? Especially when some of the scaling stuff, we talk about deferring commitment, respecting people, optimizing the whole, and delivering fast, right? All those things tie into it, especially when we talk about scaling. All those things tie into the things that we want to do. When we talk about value streams, for example, in SAFe, we talk about ways to try to eliminate wastes and try to, reduce the handoffs and everything. But ultimately, we know that also it's about respecting people and the culture, and how core that is to all of this. Being able to pull an andon cord and basically, if there's an issue or a problem, being able to raise it, right? So, again, I think it depends upon the organization and the culture, though. Some are specific and dedicated to Agile, and they may not see the wider lean Agile view or see those roots that you're talking about. In other cases, there are people that are deep into it. I've seen organizations that, do Kanban and certainly limit their width and visualize their workflow and all of that. So anyway, that's my perspective. I'd love to hear other folks as well.
Yeah, for me, like Agile and lean are just like this, like they just go together. The roots of them are intertwined the way I look at them. The whole idea of empowering teams, the human side to this, that to me is the part that I really get excited about. And I see that very much in common between the two approaches.
Actually, my challenge with the lean framework, Agile framework, is that many people believe that to be lean, you can throw out everything out of the window. And actually, we need indicator or measure to check, yes, what is the work in progress we have? Are we meeting our goals? And just not having those indicators is an impediment for me to to function as a company.
Andrea, I thought that was the same thing that happened with Agile when it came in. It was like, oh, we can just get double the amount of work done, without any of the structure. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that's really the core reason I asked, right? Because a lot of Agile, like I said, is based on Lean, but Lean is also, one of the 5 principles, right, is to map your value streams, and then scaled Agile borrows on that, right, by something called the operational value stream, which is the tools and the people that directly provide the value to the customer, and then the development value stream, where the people that create the tools that the people that provide their value directly to the customer use, right? So without that, kind of creates an ecosystem within a company, right? Especially if you're talking about IT, where you've got business folks and then IT folks, right? Because you may have one step of the process to provide value is to, attract a customer. And then in order to do that, you need a website. Well, guess who's creating that website? You have a development team, and they're developing software to do that. And that software is hosted on a data center, which has servers, right? So you see, as you go down the vertical slice, you have these large ecosystems that, if not addressed properly, right, you could have different teams with different priorities delivering on different cadences, all interdependent on each other in an ecosystem. And then you've got a customer who's waiting on real value because people can't untangle that ball of fishing line. So, I mean, that's kind of the reason that I ask it, is because I see so often that people just jump right into Agile and jump right into Scrum without having that grounding in Lean and Lean manufacturing and understanding about waste and why we want to organize and get away from silos, and why we want to have, why we want to start small with Scrum and then scale that appropriately and align teams around value, right, to eliminate dependencies and things like that. So I was curious, because I find so often that people just jump into the tools and not the reason for the tools or how they're created, so they don't know how to use them.
And I think you nailed it with that last line, not the reason they created it. There's Jessica Kara has a great line: copy the questions, not the solutions. It's like, why are we doing this, and what's the reason we're doing it? But you raised another interesting question sort of got raised in my head, is how do you expand it, beyond the development team, right? And how do you get that product thinking that goes, as opposed to these individual projects, and get more of a systems thinking piece to it? Like that's part of the challenge I've seen. We've optimized flow within the development team. We can do continuous delivery. And then, after, and I'm not talking about my current company, I'm just in general, I've seen it at other places and places I've worked, but you got to wait a couple months for the rest of the stuff to be ready so you can actually get value to the customer. So I'd be curious how people expand some of these things, like beyond development teams.
I mean, yeah, if you're a true productized organization, right, then you're trying to deliver value to the customer, and they don't care how the sausage is made, right? That's waste. And so how do you measure development stream teams that are creating a website that somebody else in the business is using to sell something directly to the customer, right? Where is the value in that? Technically, that's considered waste from a Lean perspective, but it provides, quote unquote,
right.
There's something that I think a lot of organizations fall into is business value. And it's things that have to happen for the organization to run itself, right? But there's a sunk cost there, right? There's an absolute sunk cost. Somebody like an Agile coach, I would consider, Lean would consider that, they're not actually directly providing value. They're part of more like a development value stream. And then there's an operational value stream. So I think the challenge becomes, how do you valueize that investment and that sunk cost? Because it is part of the sausage making. And at the end of the day, you're really trying to optimize how quickly that the customer can gain value, right? Is the product within their price point? Does it meet their spec? Is it available when they want it? And all we're trying to do as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches and people in agility is optimize that, right? And that's really what Lean sought to do. And I think without that grounding, it's kind of hard to express that across the organization. And I see it from the top down. I see where finance looks in terms of short-term projects. Let's have a flexible workforce, and let's outsource to a lot of different folks and not keep dedicated teams, right? Mm-hmm. And let's have this flexible workforce that's contingent, that we don't create Scrum teams that stay together and learn over time. Let's not make a long-term investment in Agile or Scrum over time. Let's not productize. Let's try to use Agile to solve temporary problems, right? So they're not productized. They're not a truly productized, I'd almost call it like an Agile self-actualized organization. right? So that's kind of the reason I asked what everybody's experience is with Lean, because I'd be curious to know. I see a lot of Agile kind of get put out there without people understanding the true origins and trying to be used in this project, sort of still this very waterfall, old school finance. I need the ROI on this 3 years, where people are trying to predict the future instead of being agile and reacting to change.
Here's something else to throw into the mix to consider. And I know, well, we're really off topic here, and I guess, you know, for those folks that aren't interested, you know, feel free to jump off, because it's really, you know, but if you want to stick around, feel free as well. Is your development team viewed as an expense, or are they viewed as a core part of the business? Okay. So, I mean, if the focus is on optimizing and reducing expense and everything like that, you are losing a lot of opportunity to get the creative juices and the technical knowledge and the technical know-how of your development teams to be able to provide value. And when I say value, I don't mean software out the door. I mean thought. I mean, what is the need that the customer has? And how can I creatively provide or design a solution that meets the need that they don't even know that they need, that they have, right? So if we've got technology people that are brilliant, and hopefully we do, right? They're on the cutting edge, or at least, you know, maybe not bleeding edge, but, you know, or should be up to date on their technology, right? Where that meets emergent customer needs is where there's an opportunity to really move the needle in a company. And in terms of value delivery, in terms of customer delivery. So what I'm curious is, how do we better blur those lines between the business and IT? And part of it's what you were talking about, John, in terms of, you know, aligning around value streams. But I would love to see more of IT be engaged in upfront sales, to have IT engaged and involved with initial design, have them iterate over the design along with any business folks and come up, you know, use a design thinking in order to not just provide value more quickly or more efficiently, but to really move the needle in terms of customers and what they need and how that works. You know what I mean?
And I'll double down on that, Kenneth. I mean, I think what I've learned is the more exposure that you can provide. I mean, whenever you call IT, you're kind of just saying, hey, these are the guys sitting in the back room, just, you know, they're an expense. But I think within the organization, the more teams that have exposure to the customer, the better. And I think it becomes really difficult, because even in an organization of my size, like I've been with the organization for 5 years, we went from 20 to 100. There have been periods where we were so immersed, everybody used to have some exposure to the customer, to periods where the teams were scaling and everybody has to be a specialist, just do what you're doing. It is a challenge for every organization, but I don't think you can do anything without what you suggested is stop treating people as just IT, bring them into the fold, and exposure to the customer is critical.
And in part of this also is that, you know, there's that, and this is kind of the history of, and one of the reasons why Agile has emerged, right, is because, and the challenges we talk about with budgeting and everything associated with this, right? So IT, again, is viewed as an expense, and the goal when you've got an expense is to minimize that expense, right? And it's a contracting type thing. So if I, for example, go out and get a contractor in my house, they don't have an unlimited check. You know, it's a negotiation between me and them regarding how much money we're going to spend in order to get the renovated kitchen or whatever they're working on, right? And it's a negotiation back and forth there. However, if IT is core to the business, then it's us together, the business and I, and the folks that are on that front line, the designers together, trying to figure out what it is that we need to do in order to provide the best value for the customer. Yes, expense plays into it, but it's not that we're estimating projects anymore, okay? It's we're trying to figure out how much money we want to spend as a group to meet a particular customer segment's need or a particular set of value for that customer. The conversation changes and the dynamic changes as a result. That's what I think we'd want to go for, you know, or at least consider when we're talking about how to design organizations. It's about those interactions.
And I think you nailed it, Ken, when you talked about budget and project. And I think one of the biggest challenges in moving from a project mindset to a product mindset has to do with the way funding's allocated. And if you can get funding at the product level as opposed to the project level, that's a good step.
That really scares the heck out of a lot of traditional finance people. And because they have to look at value more often. And they can't look at these 3-year, 5-term, you know, in a year. You're really looking, you're iteratively developing the product. Well, so is your value, right? Value changes daily. I mean, the market changes daily, right? And that's what Agile is all about, is adapting to the market. What could be, you know, the product today may not even exist in 3 or 5 years. It may change so rapidly, right? So the whole way that finance, and this is just in general, finance had been done the same way for so long that it's taken them so long to unravel from it, you know, and Agile presents a huge paradigm shift for the people owning the budgets, especially for, you know, finance and banks and you know, some of these industries, right? So it's a very old school way of thinking is well, we'll do short-term projects, but it really, you know, product funding and being able to adapt, you know, if we think about taking lean to the extreme and just in time, it's almost like, if you remember the cartoon, the Jetsons, right? When they wanted a meal, they thought about it, they went over to hit a button, it was there. So if you know, if you think about, well, boy, this product could be much better if you just added a button here, and the next thing you know, the product comes to you with a button on it, right? I mean, that's to the extreme, but that's really the kind of way of thinking that not only the teams building the product, but the teams financing the product and the funding and the R&D, and they have to get, and the only way to get there is to be comfortable with, honestly, empiricism and testing things out and maybe not getting, it's really R&D, which has always kind of been problematic for finance. Empiricism and R&D have just in general been a problem for finance, right? They tend to look at it on the negative side as to how much money, you know, what's it costing us versus what's the potential for us to come with a breakthrough product. And I don't necessarily know how you control or change that necessarily, that mindset, but that's really where the gap lies. Because if data is the new oil, how the companies that are able to react to those changes in the data in the marketplace and what data people need and how they need it presented and visually to give them what they need to action quickly and more efficiently and to higher quality than others, and that's who's going to win the race, right? But experimenting and that R&D around that is something that traditional finance has struggled with, and I think they still are in terms of transforming these organizations, because I think you'd see a lot more Agile organizations from top to bottom instead of just something ground up coming from developers.
So there is no silver bullet, obviously, and this is a hard problem. But I you know, Ken talked about doing empathy mapping, you know, and along that line, this one guy gave a talk. It was actually on CI/CD and technology, and somebody at the end said, well, how do I get started? And you know, he said, find the person who really annoys you and is holding you back and just like really bothering you. Go buy them lunch and ask them what problems they're having and how can you help? And just listen, you know, and I think that empathy approach is a good first step. You know, my kids took this public speaking course when they were young, and one of the chapter titles really always, I still remember, people don't care what you have to say until they know you care. You know, so sort of getting in and understanding what their problems are is a good first step in building that relationship that can increase the odds of spanning boundaries and silos and treating it more like a product. In fact, yeah, and I think like any transformation change and even learning change is all about like, what can we do to increase the odds that this will happen?
Yeah, customer centricity, right? It's kind of almost like it's like free market research. Let the customer tell you what the product should be. right? Why would you, there comes that battle. Oh, we know better than our customers. And that's a real tricky thing, right? When you try to predict what your customers are going to do instead of letting them tell you what they want to do and then figuring out if you can absorb it, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. But I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic.
Well, I'd like to add a little bit of nuance to that. Right? Really, it's the technology folks that are able to bring the solutions. They're the ones that are familiar with the technology. They're the ones that are able to identify where the leading edge and capability is for technology. And if you have a really clear understanding of what the customer's problems and issues are, or what the work is that they're trying to get done, if you can have those development teams integrating and working with those folks directly to understand those customers, you may be surprised that they are the ones that are going to come up with solutions that you may not even anticipated. There's that degree of creativity that they're able to bring to the table that is frequently ignored. And that's unfortunate, because I think if they know their technology really well, if they are able to see where the leading edge of technology is compared to where the leading customer needs are, that's when you're going to have a product that's going to knock the socks off of your folks that are looking at revenue and other things, because customers are going to flock to it. You're providing something that is innovative and new. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it, right? It is, I love the Clay Christensen talk, what job are you hiring this milkshake to do, right? And it starts with,
jobs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. It's meeting with the business leaders and people at the front lines, because they know a lot more about customers in certain ways too, right? And understanding what the needs are and the problems are. And then you're absolutely right, Ken. It's matching the technology and what problems the technology is actually capable of solving. Right? Because usually technologists, and I've done it in my past, where, oh, here's a cool new toy. Let's find a problem to solve with it, right? And that never works. Yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah, so I'm kind of circling back. I'm looking at some of the stuff in chat, and there's a whole conversation going on with Sandaya and Al and Andrea, and I'd love to bring that to fore if anybody has time to stick around for that. Would you folks be willing to kind of come off of chat and bring it into the conversation?
Yeah, sure, folks. So this is this is my burning problem now. I have to pitch to all the global heads my approach to get them to commit to give me some personnel or commit some people to give me the requirements for what is missing in the current operational reporting system. So now, my thought process is how to pitch what approach I will take. I have only this much, like 15-20 minutes of that time. How should I market or pitch what approach I'm going to take to get them to give me the operational reporting requirements? So this is like a real world problem, and I'm scratching my head. Anyone has any insight?
So
how should I get them to give me what I want?
Do they have any prior experience with Agile or Agile approaches, or is this
yeah. So there are some product owners, but now they have defined a platform which has come into production, or which has been operationalized, but there is a lot of legacy reporting from the prior legacy systems which cannot be supported. So now it's across like global regions like South Africa, EMEA, APAC, Australia, and so on and so forth. So every region is supposed to give its unique requirements based on, say, compliance, etc., including other areas. So now my boss tells me, you have to come up with a story and you have to say, this is our approach to getting, and I don't know how to bring up that approach. How am I going to approach them? How to put it in words? If somebody was to ask me, I will say, okay, give me some people for people on the ground, and I'm going to speak to them and get their input to get the requirements. But I cannot put all that in a PowerPoint presentation that this is my approach. How to put it in a polished way so that I will get the cooperation that I need and the help and support I need. Otherwise, I can't do anything.
So,
Can I throw a couple suggestions out there? Are you on that, Steve? Okay.
no, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. Without understanding the context of the organization and what's going on, it's always a challenge to provide recommendations. Here's some places or things that you might want to look at. Number one, who is the audience? And when I say that, I mean tactically. If you could try to figure out or even have pre-conversations with some of the folks in the room that are influencers, if you could find out from them, float a trial balloon or sample discussion that, hey, I'm going to be having this conversation in, a week or two or however many days about, this need for operational reporting. What are your thoughts? It's almost like you're trying to prime the pump or understand what the concerns or issues are before you come into the room. So that way, when you come into the room and they start asking questions, a lot of those questions have already been answered because you've been having those backdoor conversations with them. And you're able to get input from them regarding what their challenges, concerns are.
It's a good point. I can do that, but I am, in order to get to those people to talk, I have to go from top to down. So now I don't get the names unless I go to the top of the pyramid before I can step down and get to the folks on the ground, because I agree with you. I've done in the past, people on the ground, they can tell exactly the pain points. The people sitting at the top, they don't know a thing because they just get the aggregated view. But now to get the people on the ground, I have to go to these top people.
Well, that's what I'm saying
global
is
heads. I just don't have the names of the people on the ground.
No, but I'm saying is if it's the global heads that are making the decision, I'm saying you need to set up on one-on-ones with some of those global heads.
I can't. Even my boss cannot get them on the calendar for half an hour.
Oh, okay.
I don't have access to any one of them. Till yesterday, I didn't even know the names.
Mm-hmm. And yet you're doing a presentation for them?
Yes, I created something and boss said this all disjointed, create a new one and give me. So now I'm thinking, tell them how you will approach it. How is our approach? I don't know how is our approach, how to put it in words. I don't.
What would it look like?
If you give me a person, I'll sit with him and I'll get all the requirements, but that's not happening.
Yeah, I'm asking about what would it look like if you did reach out to those folks? If you asked, well, who's going to be in the meeting, and then reached out to them.
No, my boss has called a meeting with all these global heads, and I'm supposed to come up with this presentation to pitch forward our approach, how we'll go about it.
Okay.
So I'm like in a blank slate. I don't know what to do.
Sounds like an organization that could use Agile and product thinking, product owners.
Yeah, I was thinking, can I say I'm going to go about taking the requirements itself in an agile fashion? No?
No, I mean, you're in a tough spot. I mean, you're being asked to solve a problem when you don't know exactly what the problem is.
The problem is, I know that there are some operational reports that are missing that are used across the globe that the current system is not supporting. So at a high level,
Okay.
all the global heads, they're supposed to give me their regional problems.
So maybe one way to approach it is, what are the one or two most important missing reports you'd like to see first? And then and then once you find out about that, I would say, let me get back to you within a week to tell you what it would take to get those reports, and try and build some trust and reputation by getting those things done. That's what comes to my head.
Typically only one or two people that could drive requirements, right? Product people and in combination with enterprise or solution architecture. So if there's nobody on the business side giving it to you, you could perhaps try to go, if you have an enterprise architect that knows those systems and knows where they're migrating to and knows what the gaps are, or teams that have done a gap analysis that can clearly tell you that A is going to have this and B is not. Maybe that you could start from a technical perspective and say, hey, look, we've identified, I spoke with architecture and here's what they're saying the gaps are. Which ones of these do you want to, as Mr. Steve's point, you want to address first? But if you don't have any sort of information to go by, that's kind of a different animal in of itself, where something like an Agile that's productized could really help. You'd have, you know, a product owner that would kind of drive those requirements for you and your team, and then you could come up with a sprint plan, release plan, what have you. But in terms of just gathering the data, I think, you know, this issue right now, because doesn't seem like there's any sort of framework in place. Yeah, I would say you can only get your information from one or two places, right? And the business and or IT. So if you can't get with the folks on the user side, then perhaps there's somebody in architecture that might be able to help lay out what the gaps are.
No, this is a good point. You said gap analysis, right? So I can put that as one bullet point, that you will give me your requirements and we will see what is out there and what is the gap. And I have to tell them how we are going to approach. That's the crux. How am I going to do it? That is what I have to tell them. I
Well,
know
let me-
practically how I'll do it, but how to tell it in a presentation.
Let me ask you a question. What would be ideal here?
What would be ideal? You give me access to the people who are on the ground. I'll get in touch with them and I'll get all the requirements, and we will create, you know, in an agile fashion, all the user stories, the backlog, etc., and implement it. And first of all, as you said, a very key important point that you mentioned, gap analysis. That's one of the items that I can put it. But this is how I will proceed. I need people on the ground. But before that, I have to sell the approach to the top.
Well, here's the thing, right? I mean, you can present multiple, so just in terms of sales, right? You may want to suggest multiple options. And, you know, you can always go with and say that, hey, you know, I know the normal approach is that I don't get access to people and I'm trying to do here pitches. And then we can go this approach in terms of going with the architects and everything like that. And also, I think a better approach would be if you gave me access to some of these people that are on the ground. I think you're going to find that we're going to be more successful because then I'm going to meet their needs more closely. Right. So, you know, if you want to go down the path of doing what you guys are currently doing and you get a limited access, you know, that's one approach. Here's a better approach to consider.
Good. So I can present one or two options. That's good. I'm glad I raised this point because I get, you know, other people's perspective. Otherwise, I was scratching my head and thinking, okay, what should I put?
Yeah, like I would even be I would be strong on that and say, this is the approach that we would normally take. And I'm recommending this alternate approach where I get direct access to them because I think we're going to meet their needs better and probably get a better product as a result and probably have less defects because we're going to get their input directly and be able to catch things a little bit earlier, right? So, you know, be willing to go in the direction they want to go and also help to open up options or possibilities for them to other things they may want to consider. They may or may not land. They may come back and say, no, sorry, you got to go through the process. Okay. But then again, they may listen and they may say, you know what, you're right. Let's try this out as an experiment. Let's take a different approach. And I think, Steve, also something you mentioned, like start small, right? Is there a way that you can kind of address these needs for one region and then expand it out? You know, is there a way that you can start small enough so that way, you know, they don't feel that it's a big lift in terms of budget. You can always find the region that, you know, you're closest to it that you think people would be able to interact with you on a regular basis. The low barriers to entry and the things that'll lead to quick success. I'm just throwing out there again, ideas. I don't know the circumstances and situation, but I'm just trying to give you some ideas to consider.
Yeah, no, this is really great because I get everybody's point of view and at least I have some meat to put to the presentation.
Yeah.
So to come up with some bullet points. Otherwise, I was thinking, what should I put? Because my boss said, how would you approach this? And I'm thinking, okay, how would I approach this?
Yeah.
one
Because
thing,
if I were in the office, I would just go to the people on the ground and say, okay, if I were near the water cooler or they were microwaving their food, I get hold of them and I get to talk to them. That's how I used to get all their pain points, but now it's not possible. Somebody is sitting in Germany and somebody is sitting somewhere else. Who knows who's sitting where? Somebody is sitting in South Africa.
Yeah. So Al, you were going to say something.
I was just gonna say that my experience working with senior execs is that they often don't know what an agile approach is. So I try to be very careful not to use that kind of like agile terminology because it's so often misunderstood. Like I recently read the book, The Agile Princess. And like, as soon as you were describing this pitch that you were gonna do, I was like, that's what I would turn to for my inspiration. It's like a little storybook. It's for kids to describe how agile works. And like, it's basically saying these are the benefits. And like you were saying, Steve, start small, pick something that's like the easy one, the high value one, get some trust in that. And then eventually you get trust in that agile process.
Al, I'm sorry, what was that book called?
The Scrum Princess, I think it is. Hold on.
If you could post that in Slack, that would be awesome. That just sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'll get the Kindle link to it and put that in Slack.
Thank you.
It's a really funny book. I love it.
By the way, this is a great example of a learning community with multiple different people sharing and coming together on a problem. I love it.
I guess I hesitate to do this, but I just feel like the need that I don't want to underestimate how important it is to try to understand that audience before you go into the room. If there's anything that you could find out about what's going to resonate with them, what's important to them, are they concerned about the bottom line? Are they concerned about value delivery? Are they concerned about the culture? Like what are you going to be walking into so that way you can help make sure that the message is going to resonate with them?
Yeah, so the message has to lead to fund allocation to start with. So we have to pitch it to be able to get the funding itself. So it's all the more critical that I get it right.
Yeah, no, I get that. The question is, what would appeal to them in terms of funding? What do they value? Are they valuing profit? Are they valuing reducing expense? Are they valuing being successful in using these reports and making them visible?
Better operational efficiency. Operational efficiency.
Okay.
So, for example, how much loss was there? How much revenue was there? All the operational stuff.
Okay.
So that was the pain point of the day when my boss asked, how was your day? I was thinking, oh God, my day was not good. I'm saying, oh no, it was fine, I'm okay.
So actually about 20 minutes over right now. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
So great. I'm so thankful. I got at least a few ideas to put in some bullet points to be able to pitch the
And Sandhya, if you want to continue the conversation on Slack, I mean, you can keep us updated as well. We don't have to wait.
Yeah, I will try to come up with something and put it, and you guys can reply, okay, this looks good, this doesn't look good, you take it down, you take this point out, and that way, I will be really obliged and I will appreciate all your input. And we can have a virtual party once we get the funding.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else before we wrap up the call? We're down to 10 people now, so 9 if you include the fact that I'm cloned.
I just wanted to say this is my first time with you all, and this is awesome. Thank you, Ken, for putting this together, and all of you for presenting, who presented, and this is just awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Al.
Yeah, I agree. This is my first time as well, and I couldn't echo that anymore. Thank you.
It was a great, yeah. And Sandhya, just one thing that yes, from somebody who works with that kind of people a lot too, you need to know what you want to get out of the meeting with too. Don't forget that when you go into the meeting. Be flexible, be agile, but also don't forget what you got into the meeting for.
Yeah, good point. That
What-
I'm going to put front and center objectives in the objective slide, front and center up front.
And don't eat your lunch before the meeting.
No, sure not, because I'll feel sleepy then.
Then don't forget to eat breakfast, though. Don't forget to eat breakfast.
And sleep well, because I'm just feeling so tired. I want to go to sleep now.
Mhm.
Instead
All
of
right.
creating a PowerPoint for him. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate it and really very thankful for all your ideas.
Yeah,
Thank you for a
awesome.
Great question.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, thanks, folks. I think we'll end it here. Everybody have a great evening. It was a great conversation. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you again in the next session, which is probably going to be a lean coffee, and it's going to be on April 28th.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, folks. Have a good night.
All the best. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Yeah.